Welcome to V2 of Enigma's Cold War server on the Syria map. This map has been playtested a few times, but it's now on the regular play rotation as the current campaign. This means if you don't have the Syria map and you want to play on the server, you're going to have to wait until one side wins, and it rotates back to the free Caucasus map. Some of these campaigns can go fairly long, so it might be a good investment picking up the map during the next sale if you don't already have it. For today's agenda, we are on our way to go attack an enemy depot that is in the middle of nowhere out over the Mediterranean Sea. V2 of the Syria map has some really cool play options that you don't see on the Caucasus side. There are now water hexes that you can engage ships to have the hex switch sides. There are carriers to operate from for attacks ashore. And there are depots like the one we're attacking far from land, and tons of stuff that I look forward to exploring a lot of it while sharing it all with you. Since this was my first time flying to this depot out over the ocean, I was unsure what to expect. I placed a few requests in the chat to see if anyone in the jet would be able to do some high altitude recon, but it just wasn't available. I'm loaded with full fuel, 12 special operations soldiers, and defensive machine guns. Now I brought 12 SOF soldiers with me because I was not sure how many targets were out there. I wanted to make sure to maximize how many Spec Op guys I can take with me so we can do the most amount of damage if there was a lot of targets. As we approach the coast here, let's talk about where we came from. We are operating out of a FARP in Cyprus, which is another thing we'll talk about in the future, but the gist of it is Cyprus is unique in how it's fought over. There are carriers that can launch fighters or helicopters, and only the A-10 and Su-25 can spawn at the air bases on the island. This makes it a cool battleground with a lot of air-to-ground focus. I did 2 sorties before this mission, and it was exclusively over Cyprus. I absolutely love it. So I would implore you, if you like helicopter combat and stuff like that, to come try this out. Right, so that didn't happen. Unfortunately, the track system bugged out and killed me on the last set of trees before heading out over the water. It was very sad to discover that when I started checking through the track file to make this video. This sortie was very long, so I would have had a lot of cool around the server footage to fill in for the long transit times. But luckily, I was able to record the approach and assault in first-person view, so not all of it's lost. We'll at least have that footage to look through. But first, let's talk about the targets and have a better look at them. There are certainly higher polycount oil rigs in DCS that have better landing pads, but I think that these were used either because of the low polycount itself or because of the issues that arise between the gameplay supply mechanic and registering things as being dead for certain objects. I don't know all the details of it, but I know the infrastructure targets, a lot of them had to be changed to the workshop model for things to work correctly, I think after the multi-threading update. I'm not too familiar with this particular style of oil rig, so while it has this large flat area, I'm unsure if it's landable. I'll have to try it out in the future and experiment to see how that turns out. If you know for sure, please tell us all in the comments below. As for the green landing pad, it's raised a good amount above the main deck, so as you approach it, you'll have to make sure you're a little higher than normal. On top of that, you'll have to be even higher because the pad is unfortunately lined with a vertical fence. I'm not sure if it's collidable or not, but I'm just going to play it safe as I approach it. So once again, if you're watching this and you know from experience, please tell us all in the comments. For a while approaching the target area, I was able to discern there were 3 separate oil rigs. I wasn't sure if there were ships nearby that would act as air defense initially, but over time as the range collapsed, I felt confident that there were no ships in the area. Still, knowing there weren't ships in the area didn't make me feel completely safe. I was unsure if there were AI infantry units on the rigs themselves that could fire small arms, or even worse, a Stinger or Igla missile. But once again, as we got closer, I still wasn't being shot at, and then I started to feel confident that this area had no defenses. I'm pretty happy this target location isn't defended by some warship, because it would have prohibited us from doing something cool and fun like this. I know the mission is pretty much at its limits for ground units, so I don't think it's feasible to add infantry to the platforms. But if it was, that would be very cool, having to orbit around shooting with the door gunners to support your guys on the ground from being shot from the other AI infantry units. It certainly would make for some challenging choices in flying, and having to figure out how you're going to go about eliminating them and how much risk to small arms fire you're willing to take to make a drop onto the rigs. I've got the parking brake set here while we sit on the platform, and I was going to stay here indefinitely until I had the realization that this platform would eventually explode, and that by itself is not a big problem, but I didn't mark the exact time the drop was initiated, so shortly after this I decide to orbit around while we wait for our troop drop to do its work. Alright, after a few minutes of orbiting, we see the platforms blow up, and I had the window open just to be able to hear it in case I wasn't looking that way. When this was happening, I totally forgot that this was a mission that was brand new, so the winds were probably going to be different. I didn't pay attention to it on the landing, but here with the smoke it was very clear the winds were coming from 090 blowing to 270. I think the speed I saw in the briefing was 4 meters a second on the ground, but I could be wrong. On the Caucasus map it was 2 meters a second at ground level coming from 180. So if you're flying helicopters, that should help you out some for landings. For us though, right here, we're unable to land to pick up our guys. They are floating in the water, so we're going to have to go for a hover pickup. At the moment I believe we're around 60% fuel, having burned down from 100%, so it shouldn't be too difficult. After the pickup, we embark on a 70-mile run back north over the water and finally see Cyprus once more. This time we are landing at the coastal airport of Larnaca to save on some additional mileage rather than go all the way to the FARP. Plus I thought it would be a good opportunity to practice a rolling landing. Eventually we'll land safely and shut down on the parking apron, finally putting an end to a very long 1 hour and 20-minute long sortie. We'll have flown 140 miles over this time period, and I thought it was an absolutely awesome experience to be able to do something like this and pull it off from the start to finish, going into the unknown and working it all out. I don't have footage from the landing, but I took a screenshot after we shut down. And I want to say a big thank you to the crew who make Enigma's Cold War server possible. This V2 release for Syria was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to rack up the hours in it. Before we go, it's question time like always. Have you jet pilots tried the carrier takeoffs yet? I've seen one on the red carrier when I was in my hip, and it looked like quite the exhilarating experience, to put it mildly. Let me know below, and until next time, bye!